I have no idea what this is, but I'm in it to win it now. I'm getting served. Jesus Christ. Is this one of the M&Ms? Is this a commercial? Some fat cheeks right there. Good God, he's Fortnite dancing on me. They look like hot dog buns for chodes. But it looks like you're looking down on a woman's cleavage and she has small tits. They don't look like beans. Man, the prison inmates are popping off! Does it ever end, or is this the whole movie? You know what, I'm not gonna skip around to find out, I'm just gonna be surprised. This is James Bond calling, we need Bean.
Can you turn down the... How's that?
It didn't change the volume at all, up or down.
That much better?
They didn't have the editing technology.
Or I'll come over there and...
It's just like a Bad Boy spin-off of VeggieTales. Make a threat, grab the back to dancing, baby. Just a normal day out here. Ooh. Batmobile rolling up. Not to be racist, but all of these beans look the same.
I get irritable.
I'm not gonna know who's who.
Make me...
Oh, baby! This guy's got some cool weapon skins there. His mom gave him the credit card for some loot crates. God damn! Who made this? Pixar? What is this? I don't want to look anything up. I'll wait till the end. It's like those old stick figured animations from back in the earlier 2000s, but with beans instead of stick figures. Did John Wick steal from beans, I wonder?
Charlie, you can't say no to this one. Thank you.
That was the most lit I've ever seen in my life. I'm gonna be having a wet dream about that tonight. Unironically, the dopest, most 90s expert move I've ever seen.
Do you know who I am? Do you know who my uncle is?
Nope.
Yes.
Oh.
I do.
Jeff, you've done it again. This is a masterpiece. Gotham. 50 BC. Jesus Christ was almost ready to be born, till the bean decided he shouldn't be. Is this not a bean? Don't tell me this is human. A human being.
Detective Cromwell, good morning.
Dumbest joke I've ever thought of in my life. Does he sign his shell casings? I, Hubert, did this. Oh, he does. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start having my condoms engraved. He's gonna start cartwheeling and breakdancing, dodging bullets.
Hold it right there.
McCree's alting.
Multiple homicides.
Why do most of them have actual pants? I think it's to distinguish the characters.
It's just icing on the cake.
So like the bared ones, like in Ball Out Beans, are the ones that are henchmen.
Your car's parked illegally. You better get it out of here before we talk.
That wasn't even a meme. Yeah, no. So Jeff Liu, the Galaxy Brain mastermind who made Bean, did the visual effects for Matrix Reloaded, X-Men First, nope, the first X-Men, Tron Legacy, Transformers, Bean Forever, Bean 2, The Party.
What's this?
Yeah. In 1996, he made a Bean movie. This has been like his child since 96. Everyone said Jeff's lost his mind. And now look at them, they're all dead. And Jeff is the king.
I had a rough night last
Open letter to Jeff Liu, if you're watching the stream, I will voice act in your next Bean movie. I could be like a dumpster horror, I don't care, but just get me in there. I have no idea how long the movie is. Hopefully it's just an infinite duration. Jeff is animating it as we're watching, so it never ends.
Yes.
I feel like Jeff did all the voices.
Such a hangover.
Yeah. Yeah, Bean, that was a kick party last night, right?
Jeff did all the voices. I'm starting to tell.
Stay for the whole.
What should sell, right?
Alright, I gotta give a quick critique. They're focusing too much on the exposition now. He's setting up too many moving pieces. When what the people want is Bean just going nuts to butts, full throttle, full tilt, tits out action. Like we had in the beginning.
It's all those ants.
Just fly up there and get him. Oh, baby. Now that's choreography.
Tequila, tonic, and turn up the TV.
On the rocks. A little bit of goat urine, not too much.
Detective
Gasoline,
Cromwell,
dirt,
concerning possible
shoelace.
suspects, rumors
norm.
have surfaced.
This is Cromwell, right? That's his name? Detective Cromwell. 44, baby. Ready to get wild and rowdy. God, the tension is nuts. Cromwell facing off with Bean. That's some fanfic right there.
Town.
This is going.
Really?
I feel like directors have a hard
What you
time
know?
coming up with like an intimidating and cool name.
Why don't we cut
They
to
should
the
just
chase?
default to using
Why
Charlie.
don't you tell me what you
That's just
know?
like a universally cool
I
name.
know a lot. So my guess is this belongs to you.
Damn!
Well, it looks like you figured it all out. Good job.
Now you have to.
Another.
God, there's so much testosterone here. I can feel more hairs springing up on my chest just watching. Thought we were about to lose Cromwell. Jesus. Now make the scissor.
Not bad,
Symbolism.
but mine's bigger.
I'm getting hard Chicken Little flashbacks. I think it's just the mouths.
Sorry, it was a double flusher.
But you only flushed once.
Honestly, the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. This man flushes a double flusher and only one flush.
Hey, don't. You're not gonna shoot me if you need the answers.
Do it, Cromwell.
Besides, I can't answer you anyway. So, I'll have to do this instead.
Oh! He's no snitch, Cromwell. He won't spill the beans. God, that's a stupid joke again. That's a really one.
Everyone. Is he someone I should be worried about? Nah.
This
Probably
dude,
just
I would
some
hate to have this
crazy
guy as a friend, just
running around
perpetually
with
drinking
Africa.
beer with a
You know,
44
that's
raised to the
problem with this
sky.
country. Too bad.
Yeah. The camera work in this animation is better than half of Hollywood movies. It's just one camera going in and out, giving you good angles, no over reliance on cuts.
How do you know?
It's refreshing.
Well,
Finally, some talent.
Keep firing! Don't let up!
It's already over.
Grenade!
The ragdoll is so good. Now this is how you do action, baby. Yeah. Every time a bean, it reminds me of Overgrowth. It took like 50 years for that game to come out, and Jeff Liu does it in 5 months with Bean. Oh, baby. The Elite Ops. How is Bean getting out of this one? It's like a clown car.
Escort detail for high-level dignitaries. Hostage extraction.
Stop listening to them, Bean. Don't let him get in your head.
Preemptive surgical strikes. We'll just play
Blast them
and destroy.
let's make one thing clear.
I
Last
can't
night
read.
was a party. Tonight, I get to work.
I called it. Well, kind of. There it is, baby. I like to imagine Jeff Liu did the mocap for Bean himself. Like Jeff Liu is just this extreme, just like Bean.
Decaffeinated.
Yeah, I just filled my pants right there. That was a solid line. Jeff does it all, baby. Jeff does it all. Oh, please kick flip it and then ride it. Damn it. Missed opportunity. It's not a bad movie unless there's a motorcycle scene. So come on, get on there, Bean.
Patience, Vegan. I need answers. I need answers from him.
Jeff can't decide what accent to give that Bean. Earlier it was like pseudo-Italian, now it's just Jeff overdosing on Xanax, voicing the lines.
It's about time.
But it's already too
How does
late.
it feel to be
Bean
by
freed
your
himself
own
30
gun?
seconds ago and was just waiting.
Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing.
Oh! That's how we do it,
Done
baby.
playing games for today. Why did you betray us, Dark Bean?
I didn't betray
Dark Bean.
anyone. The Shadow Agency
That sounds like an
betrayed
Xbox
me.
Live auto-generated gamer tag.
You're the one who destroyed our database
Dark
and
Bean
stole
55.
years of intelligence work. How could you do that? No, you're lying. I'm not gonna believe you. I won't believe a word you say.
Don't tell me that's how the boss fight ends. No. Not against Vegan. Come on, Vegan was a... Oh, no. He was such a bad... Well, that's underwhelming. That was wasted potential. Thanks for the resub, Cecil. I'm not satisfied with that. I'm blue-balled now. Now I need to rely on Rule 34 fan art to show me how this fight could have gone.
Don't shoot! Hold your fire!
He really can... Jeff cannot decide on this Bean's voice. Now he's doing like a Peter Griffin.
If you tell me what I need to know, I can
Is he gonna beat all their... Oh, baby! Now we're feeling it. Hope everyone's got a condom on. You're gonna need it. This is the patented Jeff Bean choreography.
Another move, and we drop you.
They decided to kill me the moment they sent me on this mission.
Was it Jet Bean or Jack Bean?
Dark Bean told me. The agency knew that once I found out the truth about them, they couldn't trust me.
Jet
were right.
Bean, okay. So instead of Jet Li,
Save
Jet
your
Bean, I
breath,
get it.
Killer Bean.
I see what you're going for, Jeff.
You're going
Very
to
clever.
need it.
But I'm no Shadow Bean.
Oh, baby! Damn, Jet Bean's feeling it already. Stop using the bean. You'll never beat him with
I
that.
certainly...
Oh, he's got Wonder Woman's gauntlets.
Well, at least you're in the fighting mood now.
Oh, now we're in it. This is what's putting hair on my chest. I'm about to stand up and be 5 inches taller just from all of the hormones pumping through me. Finally, Bean squaring off against Jet Bean. Oh! It's like unironically cool. Like, it's just like genuinely fun. God, this is making my throb. Man, and to think I was gonna play a video game tonight, I would have missed Bean. I would have never known about this. That's a shame. That's a sin. Somewhere in the multiverse, one cursed Charlie played a video game tonight and not watched Bean. Feel bad for that guy. Ooh! Good counter, good counter. Damn! A power bomb! Atomic drop his and then eat his vulva. Cunnilingus. Oh yeah. He's gonna shoot himself. I win. That's like some Mortal Kombat shit.
Wick for and streaming it so we can watch it with you. I'll help cover admission.
Yeah, no worries, Nube. Keanu Reeves gave me this director's cut of John Wick 4, just for the sole purpose of streaming it. I will petition to Jeff Liu himself to put the sequel on here, or if the sequel's, you know, on VHS or I don't know, or 8-track, have him get a studio and port that.
This will do.
Oh, God, what a movie! What a movie! Who suggested this? Mod that man. Great suggestion. From start to finish, just a masterpiece. Showing the full capabilities of the Unreal Engine 1999. M. Night Shyamalan is back, and he's Vince McMahon walking to the big screen again with a big banger called Trap. It's all about it who takes his daughter to a concert, and it turns out that concert is actually a setup from the authorities to catch him. Now, I called it a banger a moment ago, but being honest, it's not amazing. It's a good concept, and it's a concept I thought would be a super easy layup, but in standard M. Night Shyamalan fashion, he delivers the twist, and that twist was somehow missing this layup. I'm going to get into the meat of it in a second, but it is kind of upsetting because I like M. Night Shyamalan movies conceptually, but he has just been really pretty poorly on them. The last time I remember really liking one of his movies was Split, and that was quite a long time ago now. I say I like them conceptually, but then I'm always reminded that he made a movie about a beach that makes you old. And that just puts a smile on my face because that is so silly. It reminds me of that I would think of as like a one-off joke about like a Netflix original film that has a pair of shoes that breaks your ankle when you put them on or stupid. But overall, Trap isn't a bad movie, but it could have been so much better. So I'm going to be getting into spoilers here. For this movie, it'd be impossible not to. So M. Night Shyamalan's daughter plays a very big role in this film, and she is a pop star in it. And in real life, she does a lot of music. And I'm not kidding when I say the first half of this film is almost entirely a concert that's showcasing her songs. There is nothing happening beyond us watching choreography and her performing her music, and then sometimes it cuts to this who's like looking around and like kind of pseudo dancing. But it really feels like you're just watching a DVD of a pop star's tour. The music's not bad or anything, but it genuinely feels like this movie started with M. Night Shyamalan just wanting to showcase his daughter's musical talent, and then he's like, well, I need a little more in here. It can't just be a concert. Eureka! What if I put in the... That ought to be a good hook. That's how we can package this concert. And, like, it's not a bad movie, but really nothing happens. So what you see in the trailer, where there's all of the FBI and all of these police officers and SWAT around the arena, those scenes are like half of the film, and you see pretty much everything that does in the trailer. So like, he's not crafty, like he's not actually good at escaping. He sometimes just got really lucky, and that was it. So the scene where he pushes a lady down the stairs, which is in the trailer, yeah, he does that, and then nothing happens from it. He just goes back upstairs, and then when he like has a fryer blow up and spit hot oil to distract people to put on a disguise, and that's really like the only two things he does in that whole arena, and both of them are in the trailer for the film. I really thought that this was going to be like a battle of wits, of a super genius outsmarting authorities to escape their net here, their web. But he really makes two maneuvers. He then takes a walkie-talkie so he can be, kept up to date with the hot comms and get like play-by-play of what's going on and where they're at, what they're thinking. And he just doesn't really do anything super smart. Like, he didn't come up with like a really good plan where he tries to distract all of the authorities by being like, holy is that goof juice over there? The best Gamer Supps flavor ever made and the best flavor of any beverage ever? Wow, look at that incredible goof juice. And if you want some goof juice, you can go to gamersupps.gg. And then, you know, everyone starts swarming like, goof juice, I gotta get some of that. And then he just slips out the front door because they're all too busy with that. But he doesn't do anything actually smart. Like, it's actually like how I would play a Hitman game. Like, in the quickest way possible. Like, getting the most bare bones disguise, then going to the employees only area, hearing a code word, using the code word, which didn't play any role in anything. All it did was get him out of, like, one dialogue tree option and nothing else. And then that was all he did. The way he escaped, big spoiler, is he just lied to M. Night Shyamalan, who was a self-insert in this movie, saying that his daughter really wanted to be the dreamer girl, which would allow him and his daughter to go backstage, and then he'd just leave through the backstage area. Like, that's so underwhelming. Like, this elaborate setup, there's like this profiler who's reading him like a book, and the profiler is by far the smartest character in the movie. Like, she gets all of these details right. She's truly, like, living in his head. Like, she is in his brain pulling the levers, and he doesn't even know it. And that was cool. Like, I really like that. But it just literally doesn't do anything to outsmart anyone, per se. So when they do get backstage, his huge play, like his last Hail Mary, because it really is checkmate. It's impossible to escape the trap. And what he eventually does is he pulls the pop star aside and says, "You see this man?" and pulls out his phone, pointing to a guy that he has in his dungeon, like his basement. "I'm going to him if you don't take me and my daughter out of here in your limousine." And she's like, "Oh, I don't want to be responsible for that." And so she does. That's how he escapes the trap. Like, that's not really outsmarting anyone. That's not being, like, some kind of nefarious genius. Like, it's just lame. And like I said, the bulk of this entire first half is just spent listening to music and watching the concert. A lot of times he's just doing idle Fortnite animations while we're listening to the concert, and his daughter's dancing, the arena's dancing, the pop star is dancing, and that's really most of what you're getting. So it's just a concept that I thought was cool, where I thought it was going to be like a battle of wits, where this is coming up with all kinds of really elaborate plans to escape against really smart authorities. I thought this would be like a Light Yagami versus L situation somehow. And holy goodness gracious, hooey, that couldn't have been further off. In fact, I'd actually say this is pretty dumb. So the Butcher is, like, they hype him up as this, you know, uncatchable mastermind. But when you actually get to see him and, like, how he approaches things, he's kind of like an imbecile, actually. Like, I'm getting into huge spoilers. But the way they eventually get him at the very end of the movie is his wife actually found him out. So he has a family, obviously, and his wife was onto him, and she left little breadcrumbs for the authorities, which led them to the concert. And right before the Butcher is about to kill his wife, because he finds out that his wife knew, she says, "No, before you do that, why don't we eat this pie?" And he's like, "Fine, we'll eat this pie. It'll only stall for a little bit, but you know what? We shall eat this pie." And it turns out she poisoned the pie. Like, no, obviously, like, you're telling me this mastermind, the Butcher, didn't think for a second that this could have been poisoned after his wife has made it clear that she has known for quite a while that he is the Butcher? How? How? The guy who doesn't make, like, any mistakes, even though this whole movie is just a showcase of his lowlights here, like, every mistake that you could make in his positions, he does make, and then sometimes just gets lucky. In fact, the only times things go right for him in this movie is when he just gets lucky, and that's it. It also felt like this movie just didn't really know when to end. It's not a long movie, and it doesn't really feel like it drags, but it felt like they kept backing themselves into a corner, like, okay, the Butcher's about to get caught, and then he just has this moment where he's got like a tunnel in his closet that leads him outside, which allows him to convince a limo driver that actually he needs to be driving the limo because he's a SWAT officer, because he got a SWAT officer's uniform. And then he eventually that up too. Like, really, it's just a movie that had a good concept that just wasn't overly well. I don't think it's bad, like I was entertained. And I think half of that is because I really liked the Butcher. The actor that was playing the Butcher I thought did a really good job. But holy, that is the most suspicious looking guy in every scene. So when he's still trying to escape the trap, everyone he talks to, he looks like a Gmod character, like going through all kinds of facial animations, just overly emoting every possible gesture. Like, he is so suspicious. Even if this wasn't set up as a trap, I am shocked that just a bystander wasn't like, okay, this guy is up to no good, and then telling security or something. Like, he is just so suspicious every time he interacts with a human being. But, like, that was part of the fun, I guess. So, another thing is, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, after they escape in the limousine, she then starts making some pretty big brain plays, and that was cool. Like, she started to outsmart him. Literally everybody outsmarts him until he just kind of gets lucky. So, like, it's not a bad film. There are things I liked about it, but I just can't ignore that it really feels like the main purpose of this film was to promote his daughter's music. And the music's good, but I also would have liked to see pretty much the entire movie take place in that arena with that concept of how are you going to outsmart all of these officers and get out of there. Like, I would have liked to see how they could have explored that concept more effectively, because they don't really do anything with it. Like I said, he only does like 2 or 3 things in the arena until he's just like, okay, I'm gonna kill this guy if you don't let me out, which isn't exactly like the most satisfying way of getting out of that situation. That's really kind of lazy. So yeah, overall a bit disappointing. If I was to plug it into the moist meter, I'd probably give it like a 50%-ish, maybe like a 48% if we're going to just be pulling some numbers out of our... It's a fine movie, I just don't think it's very good. It could have been so much better, but like I said, it really felt like the focus of the film was on M. Night Shyamalan's daughter's music, and they didn't really know what else to do beyond a concert. Like, I don't know why you'd have a who's hyped up to be, like, super crafty and everything, do pretty much nothing crafty. It was just kind of a bit of a letdown for that. Cool concept, and once again, just not super well. That's about it. So, yeah. The new Deadpool movie has arrived at a time where interest and hype in the Marvel movies couldn't be lower. Most people seem to have more hype around finding an extra chicken nugget in their Chick-fil-A order than they do for a new Marvel film that comes out. But this one, kind of a special exception for most people, myself included. I like Deadpool 1 and 2 quite a bit, so I had high expectations for this one, and no matter how hard film Twitter wanted to convince people that this was going to be a disaster, it's just not. Also, while on that topic briefly, what the f*** has happened to film Twitter? They're off their gourds sometimes. So for those that don't know, there was like a sneak peek scene of Deadpool and Wolverine that went online, and Twitter ate it alive. They went ballistic, blowing a gasket about like, this is not only the worst scene in a Marvel movie, but the color grading here makes it one of the worst scenes Hollywood has ever produced on the big screen in 100 years. This movie is unacceptable. It looks like a film student project. This movie's dead on arrival. All from one like 2-minute scene. Anyway, the movie's good. I really enjoyed it. However, it is my least favorite out of the 3. I think out of the 3 Deadpool movies, this one's probably the weakest. And it might be because there was too many cooks in the kitchen. I know it has like 5 writers on this one, whereas previous ones had 2 and 3. Or maybe it's just a symptom of knowing what to expect with Deadpool now. For the first 2 films, I wasn't like the most Deadpool enthusiast, like, you know, encyclopedic knowledge of everything about the character, so I went into those movies pretty blind and was not really familiar with what kind of humor Ryan Reynolds could breathe into a character like Deadpool. But now Ryan Reynolds is a superstar, damn near household name. I bet if you polled 1,000 Americans right now, there'd be more people that knew Ryan Reynolds' name than Jesus Christ. Like, he is a very big, popular actor, and his humor is Deadpool's humor. So, since Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds has used that same humor in pretty much all of his films, and it's not a bad thing because it's still entertaining. He is still a guy that makes me giggle, but it didn't have me giggling as much as the first two. Like, I wasn't spitting up in my seat, kicking my legs or anything, right? But it did have me laughing a couple of times, which is infinitely more than I can say for many other films that inject comedy into it. The Hollywood comedy formula has been big stinky for a minute now. And even though I wasn't laughing as hard as previous Deadpool movies, I actually thought it excelled in a couple of other areas. And I'll get to that in just a minute. Real quick, I want to give a big thanks to a sponsor. Big thanks to Helix for sponsoring this video. You've heard me talk about Helix quite a few times over the last few years, and that's because I've used Helix mattresses for the last few years, and I really think that they're great mattresses. They feel catered to your specific body type, and that's because of the sleep quiz they have you take, which asks you questions about your sleep preferences as well as like your body type, and it matches you with a mattress that really feels perfectly catered for that. Based on my results, Helix matched me with their Dusk Luxe mattress because I like the medium feel and tend to sleep on my stomach and back. So I think it's an extremely comfortable mattress. It was also really convenient because it gets delivered right to your door. It's in a box, it's rolled up, you unroll it, and it's just quick to set up. There's also a 100-night trial to ensure that you love it. Helix mattresses have a 10-year, and they even offer financing options and flexible payment plans, so a great night's sleep is never far away. You can get started with a Helix mattress by clicking the link in the description below. Right now there's a 4th of July sale going on, so you can actually get 30% off of Luxe and Elite mattresses, plus 2 free pillows, and generally 25% off site-wide. So once again, big thanks to Helix for sponsoring this video. You can click the link in the description below to get started. So where I think Deadpool did an extraordinary job is with its action. I've always enjoyed the highly stylized action of the Deadpool films, but this one really goes hog wild with the action. There is a lot of big scale action sequences here, and they are hype. Like, the very first action scene happens like 5 minutes into the film, and it's got the Backstreet Boys playing, and it's just so creative and so good. It is oozing with style, and I loved it. Even in the big action scenes where there's a lot of moving pieces, like there's a lot of pawns getting like insta-gibbed like it's Team Fortress 2, there's a lot of heroes like fighting all at once, it never feels like just clutter. Which in a lot of films, when you have a lot of people on screen all fighting, it just looks like noise. You can't make heads or tails of it. It's like a bunch of action figures just colliding into each other. But here, it's not really like that. You could focus on each individual character and see the henchmen that they're fighting, and it's still well choreographed, and there's like visual effects that are put in there with like actual tender love and care. So you'll have just a side character blowing up a henchman and their titty flies off, and there's like blood flying all over the place in the background. Like, they clearly put a lot of care into the big sequences, and it shows. I think the action was probably the best in the series, to me at least. I really enjoyed it, and I think that helped really elevate that is just how much I cared about some of the characters they introduced. Now, that does come with like a flip side of the coin, because unfortunately that took away from some already established characters in the Deadpool series, but man, it's hard to be disappointed with some of the cameos here. And I'm not really like the kind of, star glup shido enthusiast where I'm pointing at the screen like, I know that character, that's so huge, I'm super satisfied now, just from seeing a character I recognize. But man, I was close with this one. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are some characters that come in here that I would have never expected were a possibility to enter this film. It started teetering on fanfic levels, like Dragon Ball Z homebrew characters type, where you have like a fantasy football team of your favorite Dragon Ball characters teaming up. That's what this movie does, quite a bit actually. And that actually comes with a little bit of a complaint from me, because they have so many cameos that by the 40th one you're like, oh man, Jesus Christ, again? Like, you can only be shocked so many times, and they were clearly relying on that as like a big surprise factor to like get you on the edge of your seat. And it did work for the most part, but it's through the entire film, like all the way up until the final fight, there are still new cameos coming in. So it did get a little bit like tiresome, like holy more? God damn. But it's not that big of a deal, because it did make it very, very interesting to say the least. Now, by far the weakest part of this movie is its narrative. It feels like a bit of a mess. Like, they definitely had an idea in mind on what kind of story they wanted to tell, but no idea how to get there. So it ends up just having a bunch of ham-fisted into this pot like a witch's cauldron that never quite makes a great potion. And I think it's because they tried to tell too many stories within that. So it's telling an emotional Deadpool story, while also telling an emotional Logan story, because we have the Wolverine here. It's not the same Wolverine that we know from Logan, but it's a new Wolverine that they give depth to and they give us the backstory to. They give us a lot of characterization of. So because they're trying to tell a couple of different stories within this plot thread, it just makes it kind of messy. And getting into the final act, it really starts to show, because then the villain all of a sudden is like, you know what, I could have done this at any time, and now I'm going to do it now because you actually kind of peeved me a bit. So the main villain's like, you've slightly inconvenienced me, it hurt my feelings, so I'm going to destroy everything. This is a multiverse-ending threat, because in Marvel, everything has to be or people don't care anymore. So every single threat has to be the biggest possible threat ever. And it's up to Deadpool and Wolverine to stop him. And I just feel like they did a pretty poor job of setting that up. It just feels like a bit of an pull at the end. And I'm trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible here. The movie is very meta, as of course you'd expect from Deadpool. And as I said in the previous two Deadpool films, I'm not usually a big fan of like constant fourth wall breaking. But here, a lot of the times when the fourth wall is broken, it's actually to insult the state of Marvel films and like superhero fatigue, kind of, to a certain extent, which did have me grinning. Like, that made me laugh. And one of the things it does when it's in this meta commentary stage when breaking the fourth wall is Deadpool says that people are tired of the multiverse, which is 100% on the money right there. That's pinning the tail right on the donkey. I know for me personally, I'm definitely tired of everything being multiverse. 5 billion clones of Ant-Man over here. Doctor Strange, Dr. Mange, where it's a dog that's inflicted with mange but has still the time stoner. Like, all of it, it's just played out now. Like, most of the, I imagine, is probably getting kind of sick of the multiverse, and Deadpool makes a joke about it, saying, like, this is starting to lose interest in the multiverse, it's scoring really low on satisfaction charts, this and that, it's been rode hard, put away wet, whatever. You know, making these jokes about the multiverse, but then still being a movie that is centered all around the multiverse. So, like, especially in the final act, it's like, damn, more multiverse. Again, and a lot of it. It's like, come on. Like, the jokes are good, but you're still doing exactly what's being criticized. Now, maybe it's because their hands were tied and they were forced to do a multiverse story here in order to, like, synthesize Deadpool into, like, the mainline MCU and all of that. That's super possible. But, I mean, damn, it really, like, the multiverse itself is getting so tiresome for sure. What's not tiresome, though, is the chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Deadpool and Wolverine obviously are the bulk of the screen time in this movie, and their banter back and forth never got old, and their fights never got old. I really think that is such a strong combination. I imagine they'll do more with those two characters on screen together. There were quite a few jokes made about how Hugh Jackman's going to be playing this role till he's deep in his 90s and geriatric and senile. I think that's probably on the table. Like, I imagine with Disney as the overlord puppet master now, he absolutely will be just this Wolverine puppet for the rest of his life. And if this movie's anything to go by, it's probably still gonna be good. So I guess we could look into more of that maybe. But like I said, overall I enjoyed the movie, but of the 3 Deadpool films, this one is my least favorite, even though I still really enjoyed it. Plugging it into the moist meter, I'd comfortably give it like a 75%. I wasn't disappointed or anything like that. I had a good time, and that's about it. So yeah. The time is finally upon us. Most people thought this day would never come, but it has. Mickey Mouse is public domain. Kind of, to a certain extent. Steamboat Willie is fair game now, and you're already seeing everyone with a pulse start to dogpile on it like they're trying to recover a fumble in the NFL. Everyone is scrambling to snatch up and use Mickey Mouse in the quickest things they can, like horror movies. We just saw one be announced with a trailer, horror games, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. Mickey Mouse is arguably one of the most recognizable characters ever created. So, obviously this is a pretty big deal that now it's fair game for anyone to use him. You could use Mickey Mouse to promote whatever you want. You could have Mickey Mouse doing the foulest ever, a 2 girls, 1 cup official Mickey Mouse production. You could do whatever you want because now that Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse is public domain. I'm not a copyright attorney, so I don't know all of the nitty-gritty. I can't really dive into the weeds of what is and is not permissible for Steamboat Willie Mickey, but as I understand it right now, and at least judging based on the horror movie that just got announced and the horror game, you can use Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie variant for pretty much whatever your little noodle wants to cook up with them in there. Now, for those of you that don't know what the Steamboat Willie Mickey is, it might sound like a SCP to you. That's like the original OG genesis of Mickey Mouse, so this is all the way back in the 20s, and that's what's now entered the public domain, that Steamboat Willie variant of Mickey. So, Disney did make a statement saying, more modern versions of Mickey will remain unaffected by the expiration of the Steamboat Willie copyright, and Mickey will continue to play a leading role as a global for the Walt Disney Company in our storytelling, theme park attractions, and merchandise. This is when they were going over what you can and can't use for this, because there is a bit of confusion since it is Mickey Mouse, but a certain version of him. It's not every version of Mickey. We will, of course, continue to protect our rights in the more modern versions of Mickey Mouse and other works that remain subject to copyright, and we will work to safeguard against consumer confusion caused by unauthorized uses of Mickey and our other iconic characters. So as long as you don't fly too close to the sun when using Steamboat Willie Mickey, you should be fine. It just can't teeter on a modern depiction of Mickey Mouse, because then Disney is going to snap on you. That company is downright, and when it comes to enforcing their copyright, no expense will be spared. They will put you in an early grave if they so much as sniff that you accidentally used a modern variant of Mickey outside of Steamboat Willie. It's all fun and games until you put modern version of Mickey Mouse in your Facebook ad for your vape business, and all of a sudden you got the goddamn official Disney goof troop showing up at your doorstep, breaking your kneecaps and putting it into your skull. So just be careful. Steamboat Willie Mickey, fair game, public domain, but not all versions of Mickey. Now let's go ahead and go over what is already been announced. So let's talk about Mickey Mouse, huh? Steamboat Willie. It's free, and it's immediately being used and abused here. As I predicted, not to wiggle my finger and say I told you so, the first implementation is a bad horror movie. Just like Winnie the Pooh with Blood and Honey. I said one of the first things that's going to be made is some absolute schlock horror film in order to immediately capitalize off shock ticket sales. And lo and behold, a Mickey Mouse horror movie is coming out. They had this puppy ready. Why is that the default? Because it's extremely cheap to make. You can pump out a horror film very low budget. Great example. I actually talked about this today on the podcast. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey had a budget of $100K and it made $5 million in the box office. $5 million in the box office would be a sentence to pretty much anything except for like this. This made it, and Mickey Mouse will do the same, all just because of the concept. And this movie, it's not even fun bad. And they're making a sequel. Yeah. So Mickey Mouse is immediately getting the same treatment. I haven't seen the trailer. So who knows, maybe I'll watch the trailer and be blown away. My eyes roll in the back of my head like I'm just truly shocked by how great it looks, but I already know this is just going to be the most throwaway garbage. Let's take a peek. It actually even looks like the same kind of costume design for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And I'm pretty sure this knife he's using comes from one of the YouTube sponsors for like the knife company. It really seems like this was made very quick. I'll get to the horror game in a minute. I'm singing a different tune for the horror game, I'm not gonna lie. Well, let me pull up the horror movie, though.
These are the best party that we can throw.
Oh, actually, wait. I feel like this might have, like, titties in it. Has anyone watched it yet? Is this Toss? Because Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey did. The audio is really tough. It's like they recorded it with their phone.
What? Yes.
Exactly the same DNA as Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Make for $50, pump it out, get a couple of curious ticket sales, call it a day. But now on the flip side of that coin, this game actually looked kind of hype, I'm not gonna lie. So, the horror movie, a pile of dog, that threw a crazy straw. But, Infestation 88, we might have a little here, I'm not gonna lie on this. Yeah, I already saw this on Twitter, so I know it looks good.
Else in here.
Okay, I think this could be a banger. Mickey laid eggs. They took some creative liberties with the public domain. Still milking the whole kid thing turned horror. Yeah, it still is. I know. But I guess the vibe I get from this is more Lethal Company than Garten of Banban. Not enough has come out to really showcase what exactly it's trying to be, but this trailer gets me at least interested. If Mickey takes off the Steamboat Willie hat, can Disney sue? If you're talking about like in the game or in the movie, I guess either one. Probably. I don't know the particulars of how exactly Steamboat Willie Mickey is public domain and all of that. I guess if in the movie he's like maybe he makes a noise that's not Steamboat Willie adjacent, they could probably sue. And knowing Disney, they'd probably sue for it, for stepping on their copyright. I have no idea. No, I don't think there's a release date for this game yet, is there? This is just an announcement that they're working on it. Again, Mickey Mouse just became public today. There's still so much time for people to mutilate Mickey Mouse's corpse. Steamboat Willie has only been off the leash for like 24, not even 24 hours yet. There's going to be some deplorable garbage that gets pooped out using Mickey Mouse. It's going to have Walt Disney again. But this time of cringe. There's a really cool boomer shooter called Mouse. Oh, yeah, that's right. There is another Mickey Mouse game, isn't there? That's the one that looks like Bindi and the Ink Machine that I was thinking about. I saw this on Twitter today, but this was uploaded 2 weeks ago. So that can't... Avatar The Last Airbender is one of the best shows ever made. Avatar The Last Airbender, the movie, is one of the worst movies ever made. And it's significantly worse than you remember it being. When this movie came out, everyone couldn't wait to drop their trousers and take a fat on it, just plant a steaming load, because the movie's terrible, so it deserves all the insults and all of the scathing reviews it received. But yesterday, Andrew and I decided to take a bath in the M. Night Shyamalan septic tank and watch this film. It's the first time he'd seen it, and the second time for me. I first saw it in 2016 because I'm a bad movie enthusiast, and I wanted to taste the forbidden fruit of the Avatar movie. I'd always heard how horrible it was, and I didn't see it when it first came out in 2010, so I went back to just experience it, and it was miserable. But after watching it yesterday again, I swear to God, M. Night Shyamalan himself has gone back into the movie to change things around to make them even worse. The movie is progressively getting stinkier. I felt like I entered an alternate dimension where the Avatar The Last Airbender movie was somehow even worse than it was in 2010. I didn't remember half of these scenes being as atrocious as they were, and it hasn't been that long since I saw it. It was shocking, and I don't say this lightly, but I do believe this is one of the worst films ever made. Yes, it is worse than The Room when it comes to its dialogue. The dialogue in this film actually does sound like it was written by Tommy Wiseau if he had just hit 50 whippets in his car. It is baffling that this somehow ended up in a big budget film. And I think it's worse than any student film, any film. It's worse than YouTube Halo 3 machinimas. It is unbelievably terrible in every possible department. It's extremely obvious nobody on the production side ever watched the Avatar show because they get the pronunciation of every single name wrong. They don't even call him the Avatar, they call him the Avatar. And everyone already knows this, but his name's not Aang in the movie, it's Ong. Sokka is Sokka. Everything is wrong. It's like they just read a Wikipedia article about the Avatar show and then tried to make a movie off it based on 3 sentences, like a plot synopsis. I can't even wrap my head around how it ended up like this. It tries to cover a lot from the Avatar show. It goes all the way up to the moon spirit, starting from literal bottom, starting from the very beginning. In an hour and 40 minutes, it goes from freeing Aang from the water tribe area all the way up to the moon spirit. And nothing makes sense.
Never have a normal life. That I could never have a family. They said it cannot work with the responsibilities of the Avatar.
Why can't the Avatar have a family?
I asked that.
I wanted to show quite a few scenes from this movie while I talked about it to make my points, but I just don't want to take the chance of any copyright violations or anything like that, because God already knows M. Night Shyamalan will get the copyright benders out here and me up. So I'm only going to show bits and pieces here, but here's just an example of a conversation in this movie. It's like 2 Skyrim NPCs malfunctioning anytime characters talk to each other. They don't have conversations. They just vomit out plot synopsis. Just random sentences from the Wikipedia article about like chapter 1 of Avatar The Last Airbender show. They don't actually talk to each other. And it's also filmed super weird, as you'll see here, where it's like a zoom in on their face, like as if it's under a microscope. Like I can see every pore on Ong's face here. Why is it such like a hyper close-up? As if I'm trying to like look at his DNA, like get down to an atomic level on him. It's shot so poorly. And they turn Katara into a goddamn trivia bot. All she does is say like general things about the world at random and ask the dumbest questions of all time. Like, this is a really small excerpt here as an example. When she's on screen, all she's gonna do is monotone ask a question to whoever's near her. It's like she's lobotomized, and all she can do is just ask silly questions. It's like she's Clippy from Microsoft XP who just keeps popping up with a question that you just don't even understand why it's being asked. I don't know why she's even in the movie, because she doesn't do anything. And I don't mean that as an exaggeration. She doesn't do anything besides ask questions sometimes or appear emotionless and say general about what's going on. For example, there's a scene where Ong runs away, and her and Sokka hear him running away, so they both get up out of bed and they say, "Ong's running away." And Katara says, "He's running away, but he'll probably be back." And that's it. That's like the only thing she contributes to the film in every scene, is just saying things that everyone can already see, or asking questions that are either already being answered or have no place in the film in the first place. She doesn't even waterbend. There's only 3 scenes, I believe, where she's waterbending. 2 of them she fails. Well, 4 actually. The 4th scene they forgot to use special effects, so she's like bending water, but they didn't put any special effects, so it's just like a calm river underneath her while Ong's looking impressed. So I imagine what was supposed to happen is she was supposed to be like lifting water up, but they just forgot to add that. So 4 scenes where she's supposed to be waterbending. One of them, they didn't even add the effects. And then the other scene is she just gets hit by fire. So in the first 2 scenes, the waterbending fails. The last scene at the very end of the movie, where she's facing off against Zuko, she makes 2 water barriers, blocks 1 fireball, gets hit and knocked out. That's it. That's like the last time we see her. She doesn't do anything. I don't even know why she's here. She's just a punching bag. And Sokka, I can't even imagine what M. Night Shyamalan told the actor to do, because when he's on screen, he just looks like he's always on the verge of tears. Like, he's always so serious, and he only has one look in this entire movie. He's like Derek Zoolander. All he does is when he's on screen, he does this. Forever. He doesn't fight. He doesn't contribute anything. He doesn't even really talk. He doesn't make jokes like Sokka does in the show. He is nothing. He is an android that is malfunctioning. Like, you would expect for a big budget movie like this, they would hire actors that actually wanted to be there, but I felt like all of them were just counting down till they could go home. None of them even tried, except for Zuko. Zuko is actually played by a really talented actor named Dave Patel. He's the only one that even gives up in this film, but even he is dogged here. But he's the only one that I could see was even trying to act. The other ones just sound like they're voice acting on Disney Junior.
How'd you get all the way out here?
I ran away from home. We got in a storm. We were forced under the water of the ocean.
Oh, I see.
Wow.
It wasn't very smart. I was just upset.
They're just literally explaining a plot summary of the show.
Yeah. With about the same delivery as me reading it in my head. The way the characters deliver their lines sounds about as enthusiastic as I do when I wait in line at the DMV and then have to fill out some... Like, they just seem so unbelievably bored to be there. And the movie, the most criminal thing about the movie is just how boring it is. Because, like I said, they try and covered a lot from the Avatar show in a short amount of time. Thus, the majority of the movie comes out exactly like what you just saw, where they're just vomiting plot summary at each other with nothing else happening. Now, this film had a $150 million budget, so you would expect with that much money behind it, at least the fighting and the effects would look good. No. It's made in Adobe After Effects, it feels like, or Sony Vegas. Like, it's trash. Look at this.
Oh my lord! Here it is!
Yeah. Yeah! Whoa! Watch out!
You can't.
This is an actual scene in the final cut of the film. 10 earthbenders doing an interpretive dance in order to summon a small pebble and slowly push it to their opponent. This is actually the scene out of Austin Powers when he's in the steamroller and slowly about to run over that guy. And he just keeps screaming. That's the action in this entire movie. It's just people standing there waiting to slowly be hit by, whether it's a small pebble from the Earthbenders or a slight gust of wind from Ong. He doesn't use any cool airbending. Like when Ong is fighting, he is like actual puffs of wind. Like as much wind as I generate just blowing out. That's what you see on screen for the fights. It's so bad. Also, firebenders can't generate flames on their own in this movie. They need a fire source nearby. So the whole film falls apart at the end, where they could just extinguish the flames around the city and the firebenders would be powerless. Because the waterbenders could just throw water on all the torches that light up their city, and the firebenders wouldn't be able to fight back. Because for some reason, M. Night Shyamalan decided to completely change how the bending works for them. So they needed a nearby fire source. Thus, the whole thing could have been avoided by just, if they just said, oh, here's the Fire Nation coming in. Alright, extinguish those torches. Then they're worthless. The film is so unbelievably silly.
That's the M. Night Shyamalan twist.
Oh, it's just like Lord of the Rings.
It is. It's as memorable and good, too.
Yeah. He didn't feel like writing a speech or a line, so he just said, go up there and make a noise. That right there is the only good piece of dialogue where one of the guys just goes up and instead of giving a speech just goes, because they just decided not to write dialogue or anything inspirational. Just this random dude goes up there and just makes a goofy noise. That's about as much effort as that went into the entire film. That's the perfect summary of this film. Just go up there and do whatever. I don't care. I got paid a lot of money to make an Avatar movie, but I don't feel like doing any amount of work to make it good. This movie is beyond bad. This movie is like getting a colonoscopy while wide awake for it. It is painful. M. Night Shyamalan's known for his twists in movies, and the biggest twist about the Avatar movie was that it was the worst thing you'll ever see in your life. So if you like the show, get ready to get in the face. It is so much worse than I remembered it being, and it hasn't been that long since I've seen it. It is so bad. And I've only scratched the surface. I wanted to do a really in-depth dive on it, but I just don't really want to risk like a copyright violation or anything, so I'm going to refrain from doing that. I'm just giving you the general basis on why it's so bad and what makes it so awful. There is not a single moment in this entire film that is even remotely interesting or well done. There is no character besides Zuko that even tries a little bit. And even Zuko, who's by far the best performer in this film, does an awful job. Because I really feel like M. Night Shyamalan told everyone to do terrible. Like, go out there and give it your absolute worst take. Andrew made a good point. He said Shyamalan probably just took the 70th take of each scene so all the actors were exhausted. That's the only explanation for how it ended up so bad. And how every single character in here is so poorly done. It makes no sense that this film is in the state that it's in. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit since I rewatched it yesterday. That's about it. See ya. I know it's late, but I just need to whine and complain and rant about a movie I just saw really quickly. You know how much I love bad movies that are so bad that they're good. I think it's the most fun you can have is getting together with friends and watching absolutely atrocious movies or shows that you can laugh at and make fun of together. And there was a new banger, or so I thought, that was coming out called Pope's Exorcist. This is Russell Crowe as what I thought would be like a John Wick of exorcists, going out there and just demons around, like actually kung-fuing them and like overpowering them, fist fighting. Like that's the impression I got from the trailer. I thought it was going to be like absolutely wild and nutty. And I just came back from the theater after seeing it. And my God, there's just a lot that I need to talk about in terms of disappointment and bewilderment that this movie even got made in the first place. So I'm going to treat this like a little confessional here and own up to some sins. Seeing this was a sin. And I understand the Lord forgives all sins, but I feel like after he takes a peek at the Rotten Tomatoes 83% score, he's going to flood the earth again out of pure for even making our species. This movie is so far from an 83%, it's laughable. It is not good by any means. I don't know why the score is so high. Like, it is guilty of more sins than any of the demons in the film. Well, even though there's only one main demon. It is the most generic horror schlock of all time, but its biggest crime is being boring. It borrows every single generic horror plot point, every generic horror movie cliche of like, you know, sitting up from the bed like the Undertaker because the child's possessed and he has like a deep demony voice. Every single like horror movie trope is just ham-fisted into this. All of it dumped into this witch's cauldron and brewed into a disgusting stew. Like, it is not even done in a fun way. There's nothing creative or enjoyable about it. It's boring mostly, though there are some fun moments, like fun bad moments that I'll talk about. But overall, I am just blown away by how uninteresting the film was after seeing the trailer. The trailer got me hype. I knew this wasn't going to be a good movie. I don't feel like anyone with a working pair of eyes would watch the trailer for The Pope's Exorcist and be like, wow, that might be pretty damn good. Like, that was never a thought that crossed anyone's mind, I doubt. But I as well as many others, I imagine, were under the impression like, wow, this will be like entertainingly silly. But it really wasn't. It didn't even try to be scary, first of all. Like, that was the wildest thing to me. It really didn't even try to be a horror movie. Its scares mainly consisted of the standard lift people up using, you know, Jedi force powers and throw them around a room, or knock over a couple of crosses. Well, and I guess there is, of course, the cliche of, like, bone snapping, walking on all fours. But past that, it doesn't even really try to build tension. There's not even jump scares, which is like the easiest slam dunk for horror films where they could just throw in a bunch of jump scares and people are like, oh my god, it was horrifying. But it didn't even bother with that. It just does nothing. It's just so bland. It's just an empty calorie of a film. I very rarely do. I took notes during this film because I was so dumbfounded by what I was watching. So I'm just going to go over it start to finish. There will be spoilers. There's a lot I want to talk about. So Russell Crowe hops back in the saddle here, dusting off the acting chops to tackle the lead role of a powerful exorcist named Gabriele Amorth. And the film opens with him performing an exorcist on a guy who's struggling with the coming over him. So he's bouncing around the bed all crazy like a toddler going through a sugar rush. And Gabriele is asking him questions like a little, you know, what's my name? What do you want? Who are you? You're Satan, aren't you? You're Satan. And then he's like, yeah, I'm Satan. I'll possess anyone. I know everything. And then Gabriele's master plan is he brings in a pig and he's like, I don't believe you. You're not Satan. If you were Satan, you could possess this pig. And he's like, yeah, I could possess that pig. I could possess him. Watch me possess that pig. And Gabriele's like, do it. Possess that pig. So then he does, and then the guy is back to normal. And then once the Satan is inside the pig, they just blast the pig's head off with it. Which honestly set the bar pretty high immediately, because I was like, okay, that was fun, silly, bad. He just literally did, like, middle school reverse psychology on Satan. What a buffoon to fall for that one, the oldest trick in the book. It's then explained a few scenes later that this wasn't a real possession, this was mental illness, and Gabriele was just doing a bit of theater. But he really did just that pig right in front of that guy in order to convince him that the demon was no longer there. And because he had that pig, he then had to go through like a religious legal proceeding where he stood trial with these other bishops that were like, this is unnecessary. You're performing exorcists. It's not, there's no such thing as this, you know, we don't need this kind of big exorcist position anymore. You're out of line, Gabriele. We don't really need you anymore. So Gabriele's like, you guys don't know what real is. Even if 98% of them are like mental illness and not real possession, there's still 2% that's just pure and you need me. So then he walks out, but not before making a goofy noise. So as he turns his back to him, and it turns out Gabriele was also like a lawyer at one point, or I believe he mentioned. So this was actually like a Saul Goodman moment where he was just like defending himself in religious court. And it ultimately ends with them being like, yeah, we don't really need you. So Gabriele storms off, and then as he's about to exit the door, he goes, woo for no reason. Because it was he did earlier to a group of like nuns that walked by him. I guess that was like a catchphrase they tried, or like a calling card they tried to use for the very beginning of the film and then forgot about it because he never does it again after these two scenes. But there was a group of nuns that walked by him and he goes, like literally blowing raspberries at them, and they giggle and walk by. So then he does it again after that whole religious legal proceeding. And he drops it after that. But it started fun bad. It was like, oh, this is super silly, but it seems almost I'm having fun. But then it totally loses all of that charm. The core part of the movie then unfolds where A family just went through a loss with their father and a woman's husband away, and the only thing they have left is this giant estate, this holy ground that they're getting like renovations done to. So there's a ton of workers, and they end up unearthing unholy. Now, before getting to that, the family is as cookie cutter as it gets. The mom's, strong on her own. She's mentally sound, like she's doing everything she can for her children. They mean the world to her. The daughter is a rebellious teen who, I'm not exaggerating, first thing when she gets in the house is goes up to one of the workers, grabs a cigarette, asks for the light, gets a light with the cigarette, then sits on the balcony over the front porch. And the mom's like, put that cigarette out. What are you doing? And she's like, ugh. And then walks off, storms off, mad at her mom. So this was as cliche as it gets with a teenage girl and teenage angst. And then, of course, she's always listening to, like, loud music and hates her mom. Like, oh, Mom, you're being such a square. Get out of my room, Mom. I'm busy listening to music. So that's her whole character, which means nothing because after, like, 10 minutes... none of this matters, but that's her. And then they also have a son, a younger brother. He's like 12 or I don't really know, but he's traumatized because he watched their dad. So it wasn't like some kind of normal or anything. It was some kind of car accident that wasn't fully explained, but he ended up getting impaled through the head, and the son sat there and watched it. So he was traumatized from it and refused to talk. Now, after all of this is established over the course of like a 5-minute speed run of getting across the most two-dimensional characters of all time, that child is exploring the house, and he goes into the basement and he sees like this glory hole, and he takes a peek through it, and there's like a door with symbols on it, and it ends up kind of possessing him. It sinks its fangs into him. This is how the demon gets in. He literally comes in through the glory hole in the basement. So the child ends up immediately getting possessed within the first couple of minutes of being there. And then some of the workers go into the basement, and they also notice the glory hole. They're like, oh man, this is absolutely absurd. Is there no decency? Where's the... So they're peeking through the glory hole, and one of them lights a flare and was going to put the flare through the glory hole, but it ends up turning into and cremating them, which scares off all the other workers. So then all the other workers leave, and then it's just the family left in the house with their child who is now possessed. Everything I've explained right now happens almost instantly. Like, all of this was so quick, there was no build up to any of it, no tension at all. It was done as quickly as possible to get to, like, I guess what they deemed to be the scary parts, with the child having like a demon voice and saying crude, creepy things. But anyway, after the possession, the Vatican gets word about this, and then they send Gabriele out there, like, Gabriele, I've got real scary stuff happening at this location. He's like, I'm on it, chief. Give me my badge and I'm going in. So Gabriele is then sent there like some kind of religious to take down a demon. And I really thought he was going to roll up in like some kind of Justice League jet, like or right out of the X-Men where they have like crazy jet. I thought he was going to fly in on some high tech, but then he rolls up in a moped. So he just kind of scoots on in on his moped, shows up to the house in order to start attacking the demon. And the demon, which is possessing the boy, is a real wacko. Like, this guy's a goofball. So before Gabriele gets there, like right before he gets there, the mom notices wrong with the child. He's kind of bedridden and he looks pale. And then he starts talking in a not really deep voice, but you know that like goofy voice you'd make as a child growing up, like the like that kind of, where you like vocal fry yourself and then try and make it deeper. That's the voice, the very cliche horror movie demon voice. And the mom then hugs the child in order to, like, calm him down. And while that's happening, she looks down and it turns out the child is squeezing her titty. And then she's like, oh, goodness gracious. And he's like, you didn't breastfeed me enough, mommy. You not. That is what he says. And she's like, oh God. And she, like, covers herself up even more. And then he starts laughing about, like, squeezing her tit. And then he says, bring me the priest. So they brought in a priest that wasn't Gabriele first. His name was Thomas, and it was a bigger mismatch than when Krillin tried to fight Frieza. Thomas shows up and immediately gets ragdolled by that demon. He gets thrown out of the room, and he's like, good heavens, this is a little much for me. We're going to need the big... So he leaves, and then Gabriele shows up. So then it's the two of them, and they try to tag team the demon in order to, solve this situation. So Gabriele gets in there and he starts, and the demon immediately showcases that he's more powerful than all the other ones Gabriele's seen because he knocks a cross off the wall. Like, I'm so tired of seeing that in horror movies where, like, this really powerful demon can only do, like, a couple of trivial things like blow over a vase or move a chair slightly or throw a bucket of dirt against the wall. It's like, who cares? It's not intimidating. But Gabriele's like, oh, jeepers creepers. And then he's like, what's my name? And the demon gets it right. He's like, you're Gabriele Amorth. Then he gets blasted with memories from his past, sins that he hasn't fully forgiven himself for. So there's, like, a moment where he's in a... And then there's, like, a lady, and then the demon pukes up a bird, and then Gabriele's like, oh, I'm out of here. So then he waddles out of the room, goes up to the other priest, Thomas, and he's like, okay, that guy means business. So then he instructs Thomas to confess his sins to him so they can't be used against him when they go, talk to the demon again. So Thomas is like, all right, it's been 8 months since I went to confession, and he starts to confess his sins. And Gabriele's like, 8 months? Okay, this is going to take too long. He's like, okay, Lord, all of his sins are forgiven. He's very sorry, trust me. So he literally uses a cheat code to forgive his sins on behalf of God, which I thought was, like, almost disrespectful. It's like, what the can you do that? Like, are you allowed to do that? Like, do you have the power to just say, like, all of his sins are forgiven without him actually confessing it? It's like, damn, that was weird. Like, he had no interest at all in hearing, like, the sins he was going to confess to. He's just like, yeah, whatever, you're good. Literally just gives him the stamp of approval, and he's like, all right, time to go. And when they get into the room, unsurprisingly, the first thing the demon does is show Thomas his sins that he has clearly not been absolved of. It looks like Gabriele didn't have the authority to do that, so he immediately just gets blasted with his sins, and the demon calls him Panty Sniffer. He says that he's the daughters of members of his congregation. And then this makes Thomas very upset that he'd mentioned that. So Thomas goes over to him, the child that's possessed by the demon, and two hands strangles him and shakes him like Homer Simpson strangling Bart. It was so goofy. And Gabriele's like, please, Thomas, no, don't do it. That's what he wants. As the child's like, getting strangled by Thomas. That was a good silly scene. But after that, then the demon laughs and then he targets Gabriele. And he's like, you know what I want to do, Gabriele? I want to you. I want to you so hard that when you start coming, you're going to feel ashamed by the release. I'm not kidding. That was his statement. Like, when asked about his main goal, it was to Gabriele. And not, like, in a literal sense, to Gabriele, at least from the way he was speaking about it. Which was jarring to hear that. It was so weird. It was so weird. And then they start trying to get, like, the religious artifacts out on him, like, the power of Christ compels you type. And it's not working. The demon then turns off the lights, which for some reason makes them stop immediately. And I'm kind of just giving you like an overall plot summary of everything that happens here, but I want to stress, and I can't stress enough how there is at no point any attempt to even build tension or show you unnerving things or make anything scary. It's like AI generated a script of a horror film without figuring out how to on the scares that they're copying from all of the horror films before it. Like, it is so bland. But anyway, after the lights go out, Gabriele and Thomas split up. Gabriele then goes outside and notices that there's a seal of the Vatican on, like, a well. So he ties a rope to the top of the well and then his moped and drives it, and then, which, takes the lid off the well. Thomas is still inside, posted up, making sure, like, the demon child's not up to any silly stuff, any fishy business. But then things start popping off. The mom has, like, a giant arm come over her while she's sleeping, and I don't even know how she's able to even, like, find the time to go to sleep with the demon child always yelling and screaming and, like, throwing things around the room. Well, that's an exaggeration. Knocking things around the room lightly. But she's, like, in bed trying to sleep, and then a giant hand comes over her face and drags her into the mattress slowly. And then the daughter, who's in her rebellious stage, is trapped in a closet with, like, a bunch of, like, scratches going across the wood next to her. And Thomas is there, and he, approaches the demon about it, like, stop it, demon. And then the demon bites his ear, like full-blown Mike Tyson bites a piece of his ear, and Thomas is like, oh my, you didn't just do that. Like, he didn't yell or scream or anything. He gets his ear bitten off, and he just looks more like inconvenienced than anything. He's like, ugh, there goes a piece of my ear, zoinks, god damn it. And then he just, like, walks back out. So Gabriele then realizes that there's a lot more at play here than they originally thought. there's a bigger mystery afoot now that he's opened this well, and he sees a bunch of like skeletons, and then he drops a piece of fire paper in there to see how deep the well goes, which of course causes it to erupt like a goddamn volcano again, just like what happened with the glory hole. And then Gabriele rushes back in, sees all the chaos. He pulls the mom out from the bed, and then he opens the closet door where the daughter was getting attacked by little scratches, and he's like, "This is not a good place to do that, so please stop. Cease that foolishness." And the demon stops, and then the girl leaves the closet. And then we have the most generic plot device when it comes to horror films ever. Gabriele reveals that all they need to do in order to save the day is learn the demon's name. This is that has been used in every horror movie that deals with demons or possession since the beginning of time. It is so lazy and boring, but that's the major plot point. It's them then needing to find out what the demon's name is. So they start exploring. They also confront the demon again, who reveals what his real plot was: to possess Gabriele. He didn't want to just possess the family, he wanted Gabriele. So they're exploring the premises. They eventually find that glory hole and they bust it open. They go inside the area. Turns out it's a catacombs where there's a bunch of these skeletons all over the place. And then while this is happening, the like super high tier bishop, like max level bishop that sent Gabriele here in the first place, then starts having a panic attack. He's like, "It's worse than we thought." He read like a letter from like a book of reports that they keep getting about the situation. He's like, "Oh my goodness." So he starts freaking out. He's like, "Ah." And then he has like a little mini heart attack. He ends up in the hospital. And as they're exploring the catacombs, they're learning like, wow, this dates back like 400 years ago. Like, this demon's been around for a long time, and the Vatican tried to seal it off and cover it up. And then while that's going on, the priest is laying, like the high bishop is laying in bed, surrounded by some of the priests that were part of like the religious legal proceeding. And then he pulls off his oxygen mask and just pukes up blood on one of them. So I guess he was starting to get like possessed too to some level, or he was really just stressed out about the situation. But they eventually find this almost ritualistic chamber. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but it has like a torture device in there. It also then has like what was a very strong priest back in the day on like a throne, and they read his diary, and in that diary they learn the demon's name. It's Asmodeus, and he can possess a lot of different people. He's like a puppet master. And Aaron, I saw this with Aaron as well as Ridley, Eli, and Tiana. Aaron made a great point. If the whole thing is you only need the demon's name in order to win, that super strong priest must have been really lacking. Like, he must have been, overdosing on Xanax and really dropped the ball, because he literally had Asmodeus' name not only written down in the diary or written down in the book, but had a full picture, hand-drawn painting with like a stylized Asmodeus name under there. So like the name was readily available, and was still unsuccessful in the exorcism and saving the day. So that guy must have been terrible at his job. So they learn the demon's name is Asmodeus. As they learn that, one of the other priests that was really mean to Gabriele walks through and sees that the Lord on the crucifix is bleeding a little bit, and he's like, "No!" And then he takes a sabbatical and leaves for some reason. So now they have the demon's name. They then confront the demon. They're trying to like win, but the demon starts possessing the daughter. He still has the son. He's like writing things on his chest like, "God isn't here, God is not welcome, no God allowed, this is a demons only club." And he's like strangling someone with Thomas with his tie. The demon girl that he's now possessed is like the mom around. And then Gabriele, in order to stop the madness, is like, "All right, fine, just possess me." So he does. Asmodeus then possesses Gabriele. His plan was to infiltrate the Vatican in order to cause mayhem and wreak havoc. And so he goes downstairs into the throne room and he grabs a giant scepter, and Thomas walks in like the action movie hero. And then he sees the girl that he's from the congregation. She's got like her titties out and starts fighting. They get into a fist fight. She's covered in blood. Gabriele is still trying to fight back against Asmodeus, but it's not winning. Thomas then has like this little coiner that he pushes on the forehead of the girl, which blows her up, literally insta-gibs her like it's Team Fortress 2. And then Gabriele's in like a one-on-one battle with the demon. I also totally forgot a core component here because I'm getting lost in the sauce explaining it. But one of Gabriele's big sins that the demon keeps showing him is a long time ago, there was a lady who they thought was possessed. Gabriele went there and learned it wasn't a possession, it was a mental illness. She was just talking about like sexual abuse, trauma and stuff, and Gabriele's like, I'm not really equipped to handle that. And then she bit the head off of a bird in front of him, and he's like, yeah, this is just mental illness. And then she ends up herself right in front of him, and Gabriele feels immense regret for not helping her and working on the mental health side of exorcisms. So that's why he swore to like do that from that point, but he never forgave himself. So the demon's showing him that, and then after Thomas blows up that girl, they also, the sound effect they used for the blowing up was fantastic. I'm actually pretty sure it came straight from Counter-Strike after you armed the bomb. It sounded outrageous. So after that, Gabriele is wrestling with that girl, shaking her around, and then Thomas throws him like a powerful religious artifact, and he sticks it on her head, throws her into like this pit of water, and then starts reading the demon's name to it and vanquishing it to hell, and saves the day. Family's safe, demons back in hell, and then we have the ending of the film, which once again brought it back to a silly bad state, where the high bishop that puked blood, I guess, is totally fine now. You know, maybe that's just he does when he's stressed out, I guess, but like he wasn't even possessed or anything. He's just like totally fine. The other priest that took a sabbatical gets replaced, and then they bring in Thomas and Gabriele, and they're like, yeah, this was a serious situation, but it's 1 of 200. You've only solved 1 out of 200. There's still 199 more to go. Are you willing to take up the task? Like actual Marvel Avengers, Nick Fury recruiting them level. And Thomas is like, let's get to business. And Gabriele reaches back for a handshake and says, let's go to hell. And that's where it ends. Literally setting it up for sequels, like a Men in Black style universe for this, where they're just going to different places and performing exorcisms. So that was the whole film in a nutshell. The reason I wanted to explain all of it is because explaining it makes it sound far more fun than it is. Everything I explained in theory is fun bad, but it is awful. I don't really know what the purpose of this movie was, because like I said, it doesn't even really try to be scary or unnerving. It's actually just kind of a genuine waste of time. There are entertaining moments, like I said, there are times where it is goofy, fun, bad, but that's not the overall experience with the film. Like, there were times where we laughed at the silliness, but most of the time it was just sitting there in silence, wasting time watching it. It just didn't do anything in general. Like, it just didn't do anything. It was just kind of a mess of a film where it had like DNA of all of the horror films before it, but didn't even bother to do it in any meaningful way. It didn't even try. Like, it literally feels like they didn't try at all. That just they had some kind of contractual obligation to fulfill, so they just pooped this out as quickly as possible. It really seemed like it was very rushed. But yeah, I wanted to talk about it because I was very excited to see this movie. I've talked about it on stream a few times about how like I'm really confident that this will be a fun bad movie, and I was just wrong. It really wasn't fun bad at all. So yeah, I just kind of want to talk about it a little bit and rant. That's about it. See ya.